And with that, I'm super excited to be introducing to you guys Danny Peterman. Danny is most recently the senior social brand manager at AppsFlyer. He's a B2B social media specialist with 10 years experience in the tech industry. He's about to join Monday.com, so we're super excited for him with that new adventure. And if for those of you who have been following us or on WiseTalk, we had Ben Kaznick, the SEO specialist from Monday, a couple months back. So we're slowly growing a Wise Talk tribe within Monday.com without them realizing. So that's cool. And so Danny has worked for companies of all sizes, from tiny startups to companies with over 1,500 employees. Nowadays, he manages social media channels on marketing teams and consults for startups on the side. He also has a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So we will be on our best behavior today for sure. So, welcome, Danny. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Danny. And of course, I am, as always, Natalie from WiseStamp, and WiseStamp is our host for today. Thank you, WiseStamp, for sponsoring yet another Wise Talk. WiseStamp is the leading enterprise email signature management platform. Oh, I see that thumbs up emoji came back.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
no,
like
it
a
didn't do
bubble thing.
it. Um, so thank you all for joining. I'm going to quickly walk you through what we're going to discuss today, which is the unique challenges of managing 100,000 plus LinkedIn pages of over 100,000 followers. We'll be going through a small WiseStamp case study. We'll be discussing content creation in AI, and we'll be discussing navigating risks and staying relevant. So Danny, let's first lay down the groundwork. You've managed social media channels for companies of all sizes, as we just mentioned. WalkMe, you've worked with WalkMe, you've worked with AppsFlyer. So, how does managing social media differ in the enterprise setting?
Yeah, so I think there's the main difference is that there's a lot more forces at play. I like to call uh, the social channels as like a digital real estate, and everybody loves real estate, and everybody wants a piece of it. But there's at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. It's not like you're coming to a bigger company or a bigger marketing team, and then you can technically just post more, but we know that that's not how the algorithms work usually. You post a lot more, you get less exposure per post, and then eventually you just work so much for like such tiny exposure. And so when I was working at Lucia, for example, it was a smaller startup. I joined, there was like 70 people, and the page had like 2,000 something followers. I could do whatever I want. Like it was never built before my time, and I could post however many times I wanted. But now, like at AppsFlyer or before that, I want constantly people are like post this, post this, post this, post this, and then you have to just say no a bunch of times. On the one hand, on the other hand, is you need to find a sweet spot of understanding that some of these asks aren't just a favor. They are for the business. They are supposed to be on the page. They're supposed to be posted, even if it's not the thing that will drive most of like like you can share a meme and it will do really well and it'll potentially grow your brand and followers. But sometimes you need to post a product update, right? Like that's it's still part of the business. It's not just this fun place to grow your brand. There's actual use cases that you have to give exposure to. So it's product updates and testimonials and reports and maybe an announcement from the CEO or maybe some PR announcement that a lot of people are working on a lot of things. And so I think that that's kind of the biggest difference is how do you kind of juggle it all. And both things have it's just completely different job. It's like instead of constantly dealing with content creation, you're more of like an editor. I like to see it as like a news editor. So you have the writers, just like how you would at a publication. It's all the teams that create content. It's the events team, and like I said, the reports and PR and all these things, content. And it's on you to find a spot for all of it, to make sure it's packaged in the right way for your target audience, to make sure it doesn't overlap, to make sure everything gets as much exposure as possible. And it's just a different job.
Um, Something I was about to say was I've seen these larger businesses that kind of use their social platforms as a sort of bulletin board, as you're saying, with their press release or their product updates. And it's sort of being kind of shouted out there, but not specifically packaged, as you said, to the specific audience. So, in that realm, it might point to a certain view of social media as like a supportive function where it's kind of being used as like a vehicle to drive other the agendas of other teams, but maybe it does have a potential for driving certain business outcomes for certain growth. So where do you see that role of social media?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think at the end of the day, people kind of tend to forget, which is wild to me after being 10 years in this industry, that social media has its own purpose. It's not just a tool for other channels. Like, and that purpose is to grow the brand. And if you think in those terms of, you wouldn't come to someone who's managing the blog, for example, and expect that the blog will only have, I don't know, announcement from the CEO. Who will follow it? No one will follow it. No one will subscribe to it. Same as, it's like this, even this webinar that we're doing right now, it has its own purpose of driving brand, or of talking of allowing people to connect, have interesting discussions. If you would have went on this webinar and just talk about the product for an hour once a month, just no one would join ever again. And so social has its own purpose, and that's to drive the brand. And so that's why there's constant, like I said before, kind of this back and forth with other teams of like, I understand that you have your goals, but I also have my goals, and my goal is to drive the brand and get followers and have people in discussions, and sometimes be a support channel, and sometimes be a place that announces different things related to the company and also related to the industry. I think to me it was very interesting coming to AppsFlyer because it's also the leader of the industry. And so every time we created a report, for example, it wasn't just kind of this thing of like, oh, we created a report, let's just throw it on social. It was, some of these reports, the entire industry is waiting for them. Like, you share it, and everybody, like, for a couple of days afterwards, there's constant tags on all these pages, people quoting us, people, if it's a list related to the industry, that a lot of people are really proud of being on this list that we rank them on. So it becomes like a whole thing on its own that has nothing to do with leads or with, other channels and other business outcomes. This is the business outcome, to get followers, to get engagement. And to me, it's something that's very critical when I like interview for roles. I had many times that hiring managers were like, "Yeah, but what's the business outcome?" I'm like, that is the business outcome, and part of it is you believing in the process, that this is how it works, and that this has benefit on its own. And if you don't believe it, that's totally fine. It's your company, but maybe we shouldn't be working together because we're just going to clash over over these outcomes. And it's, again, if I go back to the publication comparison, it's like asking the editor of the publication how many subscribers that editor brought in with a specific, story. It doesn't work like that. Like, you do a good job, subscribers go up. Maybe a specific post here and there will make like a significant difference if something became viral. Um, but the benefit is that people are reading, and you can see those numbers: who's reading, how many people, how many followers did you gain every month, and so on. So I think it's time in 2025 that this industry realizes that social has its own. It is the business outcome, the growth of the
Well
followers.
said.
Yeah.
Um, well, this really does lead into my next question, which proving the ROI is difficult. It's a bit of a struggle, and you touched upon some of the metrics that you do prioritize. So, what are the metrics that you generally focus on, and do you maybe recommend some sort of attribution model to make the point that what you're doing is moving the needle?
So my go-to is usually followers and impressions. So
Mhm.
impressions, just per post, I kind of know if it did well or not, because you have an average that you kind of know, and you're obviously always trying to um, have all the posts do better than the average, and grow over time. And obviously the followers as a general metric of you're doing well because you're growing. Um, in terms of attribution, so another thing that people maybe don't give it enough thought is that the social platforms themselves, you're kind of banking on you're relying on their algorithm and what they want you to do, and they don't want you to get out of the platform and go to your blog or your website and stuff like that. So by creating content and a strategy that focuses on traffic, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because you're creating content that's not compatible with the actual platform. The goal is to create conversation, the goal is to create exposure and engagement, and you're choosing traffic, which is like the 10th thing that you should be measuring yourself on, as the main thing. Then all your content becomes filled with links. And then you can say, oh, I can attribute it all because I put UTMs on all my links, which is great. But then you're like, oh, social doesn't do anything. Well, that wasn't the purpose of the platform. So the attribution here is kind of funny, because like you don't need to attribute that really, because the purpose is the conversations. The purpose isn't the traffic. Um, One of the examples I always give, it's like this rule, this organization rule, or I don't know, Parkinson's rules or something like that, which is when the metric becomes the goal, it loses its meaning. And the example that I like to give is like if you create if you have traffic control, traffic cops, right? They are supposed to keep the road safe, and the tool that they have is to give you tickets. But then, if the goal of the cops is to give you as many tickets as possible, to prove that everything is safer, then we know that it's not going to work, because people just get tickets for no reasons, and the whole thing just loses its purpose. And so, to me, checking traffic for social is kind of like that. The goal isn't that, and you can't force your social media person to just share a million links all the time, because it's just not going to work, and the whole thing is just going to be useless waste of time and resources. Um, so yeah, like I said, there's still an element of believing in the process and seeing social for what it is, and not everybody sees it, unfortunately.
I find that your very strong take is refreshing, because in my research before this webinar, I was trying to delve into some stats, and there have been, we're given that we're right at the end of 2020 for 2024. There's a lot of info available on what happened last year in terms of engagement and what did the best on social media, especially on LinkedIn. And it did say that the best uh, the businesses that did the best in social media, they did manage to strike a balance between like those external posts with external links and posts without. And it seems that most people are trying to be very mindful of both of those, and even splitting their content strategy, maybe even right down the middle. But of course, it depends for different businesses and sizes and what their goals are with their social media. So uh, it's very refreshing to hear like your very strong stance on
Yeah.
this matter. So thank you. Um,
Let me just say, I'm not against adding a link, but the whole
right.
purpose is to give the value in the post itself. It isn't to hide the content behind the link. So it's not like if we're creating a report and obviously you want people to read the whole report and you're not going to share all of it on the social post. So it's I'm not against putting the link, but in the post itself, give the value already, give some highlights, give something unique, some highlight a trend or something that people haven't read before. Then if someone wants to read the report, amazing. They can go there, it's available, it's part of the post, and you can track that traffic, but it shouldn't be the main goal. That's my main purpose.
That makes so much sense. Um, and when it comes to, let's say, sharing the collateral, sharing all of the work from other teams, how do you go about prioritizing that and folding it into like a core content strategy and striking that balance while um, having your own vision for the social media content?
Yeah, so I think over the years, at first when you start doing social, you're kind of like just the end part of every process, right? Like people do stuff, then they send it to you, and you just share it. And you feel like a small cog because you're just at the end, and that's your purpose to share it. And I think somewhere along the way, I understood that if I am part of the process in an earlier stage, and I can put myself in those earlier stages because I need to take it out at the end. I need to share it at the end. So why wouldn't you loop me in from the beginning? And so I think over time, I kind of got to be more involved in things from the beginning, and then I have kind of more of a say in the process, but also I can see how big this thing is because if I just get to the end, I don't know what this is. I don't know how many people worked on it. I don't know how important it is. But if I'm at the beginning and then someone came to me like, "Hey, I want to release something next month. Can I work with you on it?" Amazing. I know what it is. I'm part of it. And I know also this is just this one something small that this person asked me. But on the other hand, sometimes you're looped in and it's a whole kickoff with 15 people in the room because it's a giant report. So it's kind of a no-brainer. I know it's a priority because it's an enormous project that everybody's working on. But if but it requires of me to put myself in that room because if I don't ask for bigger project or ask to be involved in earlier stages, or then no one's gonna just call you. You kind of have to eventually they do call you because it becomes the norm, right? But so I think that's a big one, and also just asking. I literally just ask, no matter who it is. I can sometimes get a post from someone who is like higher up, and I'm like, I'm just asking, is this important? Like, how important is this? Can I move it on to a different date? Like, how rigid is this content? Can I play with the design? Like, and it requires some, to feel comfortable asking questions of people. There's some office politics has this like negative connotation as something that people, maybe don't like, or but at the end of the day, it's just a different way of talking about navigating relationships at work. And so yeah, I think when I joined AppsFire, it was already a huge company. I didn't, make insane changes, but there are certain things that I had to change in terms of like letting people know that they can't just come in and just say, "Hey, post this." You have to do some, you have to sometimes say no, sometimes work a little bit with them. Uh, ask questions, make them understand your strategy. Because a lot of times when I explained why I don't want to post it, they're like, oh, yeah, that's totally makes sense. Or I'm saying, listen, on LinkedIn, it's a bit small. Maybe we can post it on Twitter or on Instagram or something like this. Yeah, that's fine. I only need this to send to a partner, whatever. I just need to show that we posted it somewhere. Oh, okay, then it's easy. So every use case is different. That's why over time, when you're in the company and you have these relationships and you're in good terms with people, then you kind of learn to navigate it. And yeah, sometimes you say like, sorry, it just doesn't align with what I do, and I have different goals, and this doesn't benefit, and so let's. But I never say completely no. It's always like let's find a way that it would still kind of relate. That's my go-to, specifically at AppsFlyer for that matter. Um, In other companies, when I had more freedom because it was smaller companies, it was just 100% what I want. So different thing.
In speaking of, smaller companies versus enterprise, when you're at a smaller company, you can sort of overhear conversations of what other teams are working on, and you don't necessarily have that when you're in a global company. So, how are you able to kind of play that? I don't know if it's called detective work, but to really stay on the pulse of cool things that are going on that are really worth sharing to your audience.
So it depends on the company. I think a mix between the first thing would be a lot of times like at AppStar we work with Asana, and there's boards. You literally just go to the content board or the PR board or the product marketing board, and you're like, this looks interesting. Let me just talk to the person. Say, hey, I saw this project. Is this relevant? Are you planning on sharing it on social? And a lot of times they're like, I haven't thought about it, but yeah, I guess we can share it, stuff like that. And you just open people up to the opportunity, which makes your life easier because someone else created most of the content already. So you don't
Right.
have to. Another thing is to obviously I always like I dive deep, so I join all the Slack channels of like as many as I can, and just see the activity of other teams, and even just the marketing, but also it could be like sales or partnerships, or at Upstart we had like industry news channel, which is even stuff unrelated to us. So there was moments where I was like, hey, I asked someone, do you think this would like should we create something about this news or stuff like that. Um, and Sometimes you miss stuff and you like something happened and you're like, whoa, we didn't share it. And you just go to the person and say, hey, this was an opportunity that we missed. Like, let's avoid it next time. Talk to me. Let's figure it out. And I think the last one is also one of the things that I like to do is I add as many people that I see relevant and probably even a bit more from the company to my LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And my feed just becomes because a lot of them share their work, and so a lot of times my feed becomes another source of content from the rest of the company, and then you can just literally go to that person's desk and say, this was cool, let's work next time on something similar.
Amazing. That's a lot of really important tips right there on how to make sure that you are staying up to date in a global company, so that you could create social media content that is really driving forward the amazing thing that your company is working on right now. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. Um, I want to pivot slightly to talk about the tone and like content strategy. And we mentioned this kind of in our first conversation that it seems to be, especially in the world of SaaS, on social media, the only way to stand out is to be funny. And we all know those memes, and I love those memes very much. So I'm not knocking that at all. But that doesn't always work for whatever reason. So, what is your advice in those cases where the humor isn't working or it's not the right place, or find a way to make it funny?
Yeah, that is a challenge because I think I actually I wrote an article on LinkedIn a couple of months ago about this that basically the way everything is so crowded in terms of like the feed and the posts and everything, to stand out you have to be controversial or funny.
Yep.
And companies don't want to be controversial because it might alienate certain audiences, it might, hurt someone. So funny becomes like the only thing to do to stand out. Kind of forces everybody to be funny, where it's still like B2B SaaS mostly, at least in our industry. Um, and not everybody know how to be funny. And I'm not saying it as like from some sort of a, it just, it requires certain elements for it to work. And that means on the actual executor side, which if I'm the person, and that's the content that I like. That's the content that I like to create. So for me, it's just my natural language. And but it also requires from the company to have these resources. So to have design and video and anything else is like the packaging to support this. And even bigger than that, for the people in charge, it could be the CMO or even the CEO, to be comfortable with that kind of content. And a lot of times that just doesn't happen. And so what I was asked this question before, and my thing is, if the industry is not funny, if you're not funny, and I'm not saying it to knock on anyone, it's just about style, or what you think is important. Maybe if you're managing some, I don't know, medical device company, maybe humor isn't the go-to. Or we saw recently there was a government agency, some sort of a government agency in Israel, was like trying to be funny on Facebook, and everybody was like, "I don't want my government to be funny. Just give me the information, and I don't need these jokes." Like, and it just kind of didn't work, and there was a lot of criticism, and people went back and forth on it, and it's fine, and like not everything has to be funny. But then you have to find a different way to stand out. So it could be with a unique design. It could be with um, again, maybe being some a little bit of controversial, not just for the sake of it, but just to say what you mean, and be a little bit more out there. Um, but the social person who manages the channel has to feel comfortable with that. And I think I had this before, like when I was at WalkMe, it was growing. It was like this heavy B2B enterprise company, and we were a little bit boring, to be honest. Like, and our actual growth, when like my manager changed and he kind of let me run a little bit more with it, and suddenly we saw a difference. And same goes with at Lucia. I started from scratch, like I said, so I was like, hey, I can do whatever I want, so let's be funny. And especially when it's a small startup, there's not much at stake. Like, you don't have many followers, so just try different things, see what works, see what the language, and also at the end of the day, like I said, you need to feel comfortable with it. So if you're the social person that is that type of person, but the company doesn't want you to be that person, maybe this place is not for you, because you can't be, or you can learn different avenues to grow, right? But maybe it's just not a match. Like a lot of people, it's another reason to evaluate, another way to evaluate the company or the role, if the general content that you're going to be working on is relevant to you. I had people like, I had this company approached to me actually fairly recently, and it's like a cyber company. And I'm like, I don't enjoy this content. I don't know anything about cyber. It feels to me like a little bit of a boring industry. And it means that maybe I can do things to change that. But I don't want to fight the system. I don't want to be, I don't want this to be a difficult thing for me. And so I kind of didn't go with it. It didn't feel relevant to me, but it could be a challenge and it could work. But it's always this. kind of balance that you have to strike to enjoy your work. And the company also deserves to have a person that can bring themselves and bring their brand and their voice up front. And if you're not the person, maybe maybe it's irrelevant on their side as well.
Well, speaking of content, creating content that you enjoy and that has your burst of personality in it, I want to do a quick, let's do slideshow. I want to share some of your top posts. 1 second. Sorry, everybody. Here we go. Share. Yes. So let's take a look at the content that you created here. Can you walk us through this these posts? Maybe tell us, deconstruct them for us a little bit. Tell us why you think they did so well, and afterwards, I will actually be sending everybody links to these posts. I should have added here the um, some of the metrics here so you guys could see. But Danny, walk us through these posts here.
Yeah, so the first one is a video we did for G2. I don't know if you're familiar with or the audience is familiar, but it's like a third-party review website. And part of my responsibility is also managing the presence of the company on G2. And every quarter, they put out these badges that everybody shares. There's a million categories, everybody's winning something, and it's very repetitive. And they decided to switch things up and suggested a creative competition. And I got this email, just like everybody else, that we're creating this competition on showing your success or your badges um, for this quarter, and we just decided to jump on it full force. Obviously, it wasn't. It was me and our copywriter that we were kind of hammering ideas for a few hours until we got this one. But there was also a lot, like a bigger team with designers and video and audio and the location that we had to find. And there's like 10 people working on this thing. So while I was kind of the focal point from just the person managing our presence on G2 and working on the creative, and because no one likes to be on camera, that's one of the issues with creating video at B2B companies is no one wants to be on camera. So like 90% of the time, like fine, I'll do it. And so me and my colleague and dear friend Daniela, who I'm sitting next to on a day-to-day basis, we also became the actors in this video of me. Um, Actually, it was like a sticker tattoo that we printed out, and I'm showing her that I got this tattoo, and she calls me a bad word and an idiot that it was the wrong category. So it's like the whole thing is like 15 seconds, but we worked on it for like, I don't know, like 3 hours, maybe a bit more, because just setting everything up. And I was so surprised by the quality of the video because the team did such an incredible job. And all the technical stuff are not me, and honestly working with the best. And so it came out really well. And because it was, to me, that's one of the things about succeeding with organic content is always looking for these opportunities of how can we amplify a message not like with the force of others. And in this case it was a competition, so G2 shared it, all the like a bunch of employees shared it because they liked the idea. And we even had, I was even tagged in other companies submissions as like, hey, our video isn't as great as Danny's or as AppsFire's, but here's our submission. Like they already admitted defeat before we even so that was really cool and super fun to work on. And everybody, like I said, that worked on it was amazing and did an amazing job. And yeah, it just exploded. I don't remember specifically the numbers now, but it was, I think, something in lines of 100,000 impressions on LinkedIn or something crazy like that. And it was all over the office. And I even had people like talk to me in real life. So I'm like, aren't you the guy from the tattoo video thing? And I was like, yes. So it's a small industry, and that was kind of cool. The second one was actually for the Olympics. So it was last summer. There was this trend on Instagram that I noticed that people do funny transitions. Uh, and we kind of didn't know what to do with it, and we found a bunch of clips, but and then we did a big Olympics campaign in general for the company. And we kind of thought, let's do something on social, and maybe we can use this trend on Instagram slash TikTok to use this kind of a video method. And it was like an homage to marketing people. So again, a big production, a lot of people. I'm also in there. I was running around the office, jumping on over tables and whatever to shoot this thing. Um, but those two examples are like it requires a big team and resources and hours and all that. And the last one was just it was an idea of Dani, a different Dani that works with me, and she suggested these like out of office messages because it was summer, no one was at the office, and it was just like again me and the copywriter. We took this idea and just thought of worked between ourselves and some ChatGPT magic, and it was just like the simplest album of I don't know, I think there was like 6 or 7 funny images like that. We really tried to think of the name and the text, um, for like the small details to work. And again, super simple. This one really worked on, I don't know, maybe an hour total, and the designer just did like this Gmail mockup thing. And anybody can do it with Canva. It was just a good idea and a simple execution, and it just exploded as well. I don't remember the numbers, but really like we're just shocked of how well it did.
I remember these going up, even just noticing them while being on LinkedIn, and I was very impressed. And you just touched on something really important, which is yes, you can do awesome things with a big budget, but you can also do things that strike a chord, that are simple, and they are just, as all things with social media, they are timely and just delight people in a specific way. So really kudos for that.
Thank you. And honestly, I can't say it enough. It's really hard to do it by yourself, and I wasn't doing it by myself. And there's a great team and great colleagues and people who are, and in general, that's part of being at a company that is aware and wants to invest in those kinds of things and lets you kind of roll with it and be humorous or be interesting. Think of like the Olympics thing isn't humorous necessarily. It's just a cool way to
Right.
show the messaging. So that's just for what we said about the humor. It doesn't have to be something crazy in terms of like wild or controversial. You just need to find a different angle to share the message. And part of it is, like you said, like timely. So the Olympics was going on, or it's summer, or it's a competition specifically for the summer badges, or that gives it a big boost.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay. I'm going to take a quick moment now to let Danny drink some water and share for a second. First of all, I do see that we've been getting some questions in. I will try to take a moment to review them right after. I want to show you guys an interesting email signature use case because this is what we do best, email signatures. So we wanted to see in preparation for this webinar what's something interesting that we could try out and share to you for you guys. So we actually launched a clickable email signature banner for the entire marketing team, and we had it going for a full month. And it simply led to our LinkedIn page, and it resulted in a 17% increase in followers. And I want to point out that I didn't have to do anything except send my email. So it's pretty incredible that, well, hopefully the recipients actually read my email and and there was some interest there. But then afterwards, there was a uh, a following up of further contact with our brand that recipients could have by simply seeing something that's clickable and shiny and nice in my email signature. And that led to like a positive outcome for our team. So that's pretty fun to be able to report. And I want to uh, share as a token of our appreciation, you guys are welcome to um, a discount to WiseStamp if when you give the code WiseStamp2, that's one word. It's valid for new customers only. You'll get 15% off of up to 200 seats, and for over 200 seats, that's 20% off. And that will be valid until St. Patrick's Day, which is Monday, March 17th. So please feel free to use that. Now I'm going to stop screen sharing and back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay, let me move your screen back up here. Cool. Now you touched upon AI a little bit, ChatGPT. So we only have 15 minutes left. I want to make it through some important ChatGPT or AI talk rather. Of course, AI is way beyond ChatGPT these days. And so, yeah, let's discuss what tools you find most valuable on the day to day or week to week for your for your enterprise social strategy.
So honestly, my main thing is ChatGPT. I think we had this partnership with OpenAI, which was very kind of broad and with a little bit more features than other, I guess, or simpler versions, which I highly at first I have to say I was a little bit skeptical because we've had ChatGPT in our life for what, like 2 years at this point.
Exactly.
And I tried to use it multiple times in the past and it felt like talking to an idiot. Like I just couldn't go through anything. I couldn't think of anything creative. I asked for creative stuff. It just didn't understand what I want. And I think it became really smart recently. To be honest, it just gets better. And certain kind of brainstorming conversations or sessions that I used to do with 2, 3 people, now I can do on my own. I still believe that the human element is stronger, but we're talking resources, and it's much easier to invest in, um, in this AI tool. I don't know the cost, but it's fairly small still. Um, of course, if you compare it to hiring another person, and you can do a lot of these great ideas that I had recently in the past few months were just me and the chat, and working for it still takes time because you have to tune it and you have to talk to it from a place of authority, and that the audience and what works on your channels and your voice. But not only it helps, you can you can just ask for it for volume and then find those snippets that work for you, but also create certain things that are repetitive, as like specific GPTs that make your life easier. So by the end, uh, um, of my time at AppStar, I had multiple GPTs that used to do my work fairly easy For example, like if I'm sharing a testimonial, I already had like this script kind of thing of how to create that testimonial. Or if there's a new report coming out, um, I just put the report in, and it already gave me something. I'm not saying this was the end product that I just shared as is, but it was, I don't know, like 70%. And that saves so much time. And so then you can really focus on the creative side and on the interesting angles instead of on the regular small work, tedious work a lot of times. That just, if I need to create an employee kit, which is something we did a lot of giving the employees something to share. It used to be that I have to write like three, four, 5 versions, whatever, for the employees as different angles for them to potentially use. It's much easier to ask for the chat, like, hey, figure out 3 angles and then work on each one for like fine tuning. But like I said, 70, 80, sometimes 90% of the work has already been done, especially when the chat is part of the company. So it already knows the voice and already knows what the brand guidelines are, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it was such a helpful and incredible tool. And I even had people tell me like that they're surprised that I'm the only social media person, but it used to take a lot more of me, and now it's much easier. So I highly advise people to at least give it a try and also give it some time to run with it because it takes time to figure out what works and how to work with it in a more fluent way.
Somebody even asked before, um, I just want to find the question. Oh, Taylor Wright asked, do you think social media management should be a one-person job? Which is, you just said people are shocked to hear that you're managing it on your own, and that's for an enterprise account. So
Well,
it's
it's
impressive.
again, it's on my own that I'm the only person that has the title of social media in it, but it's not like I'm creating all the content from scratch. Like I said, there's at AppsFire there was over 100, like 120 people marketing team. So it's not like you're actually on your own. But listen, at the end of the day, it depends on how much you want to invest. So should there be one person? That's a very subjective question. Depends on the size and the goals of the company. I'm obviously biased, and I would say no, the more the merrier, right? But even then, it needs to be in a smart way. Like there's needs to be a reason to have two, three, four, 10 people. I remember back in the day, I heard that at Wix, for example, they had like 20 people social team. Okay, they're kind of a B2C. They have different verticals, they have different channels. So sure, because once you decide on a new channel, you can potentially have someone full time working on it. So depends on the industry, depends on your audience, depends on so many different factors. Also depends on if you can sustain it as a bigger operation. So if you have 3 people and 3 platforms that you're like investing full time on, that means you need 3 times the designers potentially, or 3 times maybe some paid budget to boost certain posts. So I always see it as it needs to grow just like everything else grows. You have eventually someone decides to move from one content writer to two, or from one paid PPC person to two, and to two designers. And same with social. Like you want to grow your brand, your presence on multiple channels. Get another person in there. And but again, not just so you can say to have a specific strategy. I'm hiring another person to tackle this channel, or to drive these conversations, or to manage these types of initiatives. And one of the things that I always try to do is do a lot more than just being on the platform itself, whether it produce a podcast, or do something with the community, or write copy for email marketing, or all these things. You bring another person in, you can really increase that effort. But like I said, now with the AI tools, I really kind of see that's not that many companies won't grow that specific social. It was already hard to prove to people that you need to grow the team. Now that one person can do even more, um, I kind of have. I think not many teams will grow in the at least in 2025, in from what I see in the B2B space.
Yeah, on the other hand, seeing those in a landscape of the digital world and the rocket ship emojis, I sort of go the other
And the
way. So I'm not
hashtags, yeah.
all the hashtags. So who knows? But speaking of, juggling, I know we only have 6 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to whiz through my last couple questions here. But like juggling different platforms and maintaining that brand reputation, um, let's move on a little bit to like navigating some risks, navigating issues with brand reputation, crisis management on social media. Social media does amplify negative news anytime there's a whiff of something going on at a company. Um, Social media will just chuck it out even further. So how do you have like a crisis management plan to kind of cut off potential PR issues in social media?
So there's two things that I think are the go-to. One is the most underutilized potentially is just not saying anything. That's also
Mhm.
okay. We- We're living in like such a crazy news cycle, and social is always use it for your benefit. You know, something happened, people will forget. Like 10 minutes later, there's already something new. And sometimes just by commenting, you're amplifying that message by putting a spotlight on something. So that's one. And the second thing is usually if it's an actual crisis and not just some crazy person that comments on all your posts, um, it's probably a bigger thing. It's probably something that the PR team, that the maybe the CMO, maybe even the CEO will be involved in. So it doesn't need to be this immediate, shoot from the hip comment. Um, Sometimes it's better to wait a bit, you know, take it up the flagpole where, open a Slack
Totem
channel with all
pole.
the totem pole, sorry, all the relevant Slack management people on Slack, and formulate the go-to plan that will be acceptable and agreed upon with all the relevant people. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you deal with it. But I think I think the most important thing is to remember that even the biggest crisis isn't that big. Like at the end of the day, it's work, it's B2B crisis. It's not life and death crisis. Like I after 10 years in this industry, you kind of go through everything. And even like the craziest days that I've had, at the end of the day, it's craziest days at work about some product or, yeah, okay, you know, usually it's not that big of a deal, usually. And if it's a big deal, fine. You deal with it with the team and with the people in charge, and you're very transparent as much as you can, and you move on.
Let's say disgruntled tags on social media or like posts, comments that are left on your posts from prospects or from ex clients. Do you have like a process with your customer success or support teams for managing those?
Yeah, so on the one hand, I don't see social as the support channel. So because that would be just, that would be another job. And the social media person isn't part of the customer support team, still part of marketing. So usually the go-to will be if it's like a message to the inbox, it would be just an automatic like, hey, thank you for reaching out. Please, this is not a support channel. Reach out to our website, our chatbot, our email, support email, and all that. And then people can actually give them proper assistance. But if it's a public thing, usually, just try to be nice and understanding, and when something like this, I do take it hands on. I am part of a Slack channel with the support team, and there's a reason for this connection that we did because it happens. And certain things you want to like escalate quickly, and yeah, I'm like, hey, please jump on it. Tell me what's happening here, so I can answer this person ASAP. And usually the fact that you answer them publicly, like, hey, we're aware of the issue, we're on it, and if it's someone disgruntled, that you can even say like, hey, like, give some information so the audience that's reading it know that there was like maybe an issue with this specific person, and it's not like a bigger problem that they need to worry about. Usually that fixes the issue.
One last question. I feel like we don't even have time for this, but um, social political stances for enterprise companies on social media, you personally, as an expert, as a professional in the field, yay or nay, do you believe that it's a good thing to do?
I think it depends. It's part of the brand voice and the company and what they want to stand for. I don't have an opinion on for or against. I'm because there's a million issues and everybody has their own opinion on something. And so to me, I think it's about being genuine and authentic. And obviously, business wise, it's probably better to not comment on anything ever, not take any stance on any issue. But I think even that in today's day and age kind of backfires sometimes, and people are expecting a certain comment. And so I don't know if there's a right or wrong here. So my go-to is, what are you willing to stand up for and be authentic about it? And even if there's backlash, say that's fine. If I lost a customer on this topic, that's fine. I'm willing to take it. I think most companies don't do even that, and that's kind of unfortunate in my estimate. But it's I always try to remember that it's not my company. I'm not the boss. I'm not the shareholder. I'm not, one of the founders. Um, it's their business, and if that's the way they want to manage the brand to the outside world, my job is to support that. Anything after that is I don't know. It's an opinion.
Wow, thank you so much, Danny. This has been incredible. I appreciate your expertise. Every time we speak, I'm sort of blown away by the level of thought and understanding that you have about this whole realm. And really excited to see what you're going to do next, and really
Thank
looking
you.
forward to being in touch. And just thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Actually, there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to in the chat, but I'm going to forward them to you. We can have a look, see what we can answer in the limited time that we have, maybe via email. And thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you for adding your questions. There were a few emojis as well, so we appreciate that. Please follow our LinkedIn and watch out for our invite for the March webinar, which will likely be about branding. So please keep tabs on that. And you can find Danny on, uh, where do you prefer to be found, Danny?
LinkedIn is my go-to, so
Okay, awesome. So look for Danny Peterman on LinkedIn to stay in touch and to follow his amazing journey, and uh, watch his amazing content and where he's going with all this. So thank you, everybody, and have a good one.